but it is not a code. It's a chemical. It's deoxyribonucleic acid. It's an acid. I don't understand why you think it's a code. DNA is no more of a code than Diet Coke and regular Coke.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Logical, Plausible, Probable. Gonna have some fun today, calling out Godless Engineer and trying to determine if anybody actually thinks he is serious in the level of malarkey BS and just, I don't even know how to describe the childlike juvenile behavior from my opponent from this past Sunday, and a man who runs around with almost 50,000 subscribers on YouTube bashing Christians, intelligent design, creation, anybody he's a proclaimed anti-theist, and makes it his mission to try and embarrass and debunk anybody with positions other than atheism. And I, well, let's just say that today he has reached a new level and is apparently doubling down on some of his previous positions, and just decide, you know what, let's have some fun. Let's do it. And so I woke up this morning, and you can brain bug can be blamed for this one, um, to for getting me riled up enough to do this little live stream. But so I wake up and get some notifications on my phone, and here we go. This brain bug character. Most recently, GE put on the delightfully nonsensical word salad that is John Maddox on display for the masses. Well, look at Godless Engineer's response. That was a mind fuck of a debate. You know what, dude? I agree completely. The straight up, no ifs, ands, or buts stupidity that came out of your mouth is like whole new levels of imbecilic. So anyway, this gets so there we go. That's where it started. Let's see if its screen is working. Okay. And anyway, so I end up just being like, wow, that's kind of crazy. Let's see what my response was. So I said, what's an MF is the fact that you dodged admitting your background in the debate while questioning mine. Why don't I come to Huntsville, and we go have a convo with your professors on what constitutes a code? It's 113 miles from my front door to UAH. So UAH, folks, you don't know this, is University of Alabama, Huntsville, which is where 15 years ago Godless Engineer went to school. So obviously I'm not constituting that we go and track down his professors from back then. I'm saying let's go to the University of Alabama, Huntsville, and go talk to some people in computer science, information theory, etc. Well, apparently atheists think that that's just crazy. I feel like perhaps you feel a bit triggered by this, and kindly refrain from even vaguely threatening my friends in my thread. Wow. Okay, so how do people come to that conclusion that I'm threatening somebody by suggesting we go to a neutral environment and talk to third parties about a position that is being so adamantly taken? And I kind of, responded to that effect. So no, not triggered. I was directly responding to GE, and since I'm the other person who was in the debate, seems like I have more standing than pretty much anyone else to make a response to my opponent's tweet. And this just gets funny. You can read these for yourselves. Brainbug obviously has serious self-confidence issues. But pretty funny, especially since I didn't issue a threat. That was a challenge. Go to the university he got his MS from, and we see who the professors think had a better understanding of code in relation to communication theory. This isn't that complicated. Wow. Okay. So that's just to put things in a little bit of context. Now let's go back to Godless and where this progresses to. So here we go. Oops, one back one. Okay. What is going on here? Okay. Now, Godless, who I thought actually was an adult, began. Where's his responses coming to? Yeah. So he now decides to get into. Oh, by the way, I get threatened with deplatforming by Brainbug. Wow. Supposedly, I'm a violent individual, suggesting we go have some like crazy violent activity. But anyway, so let's get into where Godless Engineer responds. And he ends up quoting one of my tweets. No, John, I don't want you to track me down so you can talk to my professors that probably won't even remember me about something that they wouldn't even be able to tell you. Just please stay the F away from me. Wow. So Godless Engineer is that big of a soy boy that he thinks it's excessively creepy that I would actually call him out on his positions and his challenges and his insistence that in debate that I was wrong. Then he then played the debate on his channel and backed up those positions again and again in the live stream, which I engaged with him. And now when I call him out, he's continuing down this rabbit hole. Okay. So let's just continue on a little bit more. And my response to that was, did your balls shrivel up or something? I thought we were both grown men. Is it scary to think about having a meeting set up with neutral parties at a university? That's threatening to you? His response, I'm a grown man. You were obviously a child because only immature children act as you. So let's think about this from where did all this come from? It's leading to this point now. Obviously, since you had amnesia, you came after me on March 4th. I didn't even know who you were. I'm sorry you're too much of a child to recognize that sometimes other men will step up and force you to back up your BS. Maybe your wife has you drinking too much soy milk. And calling someone out who has literally made their life's work to accuse others of being idiots, crazy, and brainwashed. Dude, your channel is dedicated to this and has been for years now. You have almost 50,000 subs. Are you living in an opposite world? And he says, there's a big difference between my content and your content. Basically, I don't act like a man-child. Well, for those of you who have not actually gone and watched many of his videos, he literally has gotten drunk in debates on other channels, on his channel. And I don't know how getting schmammered while you're engaging in supposed intellectual discourse means that you're not a joke. And he now claims, I act drunk as part of a show sometimes, but I haven't been drunk on camera in a while. Okay. Anyway, now he's doubling down. Okay, John, just physically stay the F away from me. Am I clear? It's like, what, dude? Are we literally about to go down this rabbit hole of, I have not threatened you personally, physically. I have challenged you to meet in a third-party location with third parties, and you're trying to constitute this as somehow threats of physical violence? I mean, I'm really not sure how anybody other than a utter soy boy would come to that conclusion. So let's extrapolate on this. Dude, I mean to go talk to information theory / communication theory / computer science professors in general and have experts address the issues. Don't you always claim we need to listen to experts? Because I'm pretty sure ad nauseum, Godless Engineer and many others go on the tangents about consensus. Oh, the consensus is. Okay, well, let's go talk to some experts. And, of course, he's trying to go back. You would want a geneticist or molecular biologist. I didn't have those professors because I'm an engineer. No, I said, let's go discuss exactly what constitutes a code. But I also guarantee we could find computer scientists working in the genetics lab at UAH. Now, here is where it gets very entertaining, folks. Very entertaining. But before we go into some of the more entertaining aspects, of all this. I just want to clarify what my opponent doubled down on in my debate with him, is doubling down on now and as we keep going, and in other debates, which is what actually led me to challenge him to the debate we just had.
One of the facets of Christianity is obsolete, specifically the fundamentalist view of Genesis. So, let's see, let me go through we started talking about genetic code, and what I have to say about genetic code is that we can interpret it as genetic code, like as code, as information, but inherently DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. It's a chemical. This chemical reacts with certain other chemicals in various systems in order to produce different proteins. This is akin to like Diet Coke and regular Coke. I wouldn't say that Diet Coke inherently contains any kind of useful information just because it has a chemical code behind it. The change between Diet Coke and regular Coke doesn't prove anything about the existence of God. So I would just caution the use of genetic code as information and as a way to suggest that we need a creator in order for it to exist.
So DNA it's an identical process to computer codes. And it's very interesting that, computer ideas about computers developed early in the 20th century, and Claude Shannon comes along in 1948, and DNA is discovered in 1953. And when we start unraveling DNA, we find out that this incredibly sophisticated communication system has been around for 3 billion years.
Mm-hmm. And we just discovered the communication theory that explains it.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so there needs to be no question that communication theory applies to biology. Okay, all of these concepts can be applied to DNA.
Is that debated anywhere?
Only among people who are ignorant, frankly.
Okay.
Okay. People in the know do not debate this fact.
But not in the credible scientific community. This is well understood.
There is no credible scientific argument to try to say that applying communication theory to biology is somehow inappropriate. Yeah. There's hundreds of scientific papers that go very deep into the subject, and so no, there's
You're
Okay, so now let's go back to this idiot doubling down again, just like he did in the debate, because he literally says, you're missing the entire point I was even making in the debate. Now, just for clarification, because I didn't want to put words in his mouth, perhaps why don't you tell me what your point was? And look at this doubling down, that we can interpret DNA as a code. We can work with it under the interpretation that it is a code. But DNA as a code and computer code are completely different things. DNA is governed by the laws of physics and chemistry, or chemistry and physics. Computer code is not. Okay, so just for before we expand on this, I just want to clarify before I play this next video that the gentleman you just saw explaining information theory, communication theory application to genetics, and that how only ignorant people think that this doesn't apply, is the gentleman you're about to see being interviewed by Dennis Noble at the Royal Society in London.
I'm talking at the moment with Perry Marshall and Kevin Ham. Perry Marshall is from Chicago in the United States, and Kevin Ham is from Vancouver in Canada, and we have just taken part in the United Kingdom launch of a huge prize to be won by anybody who can produce the genetic code or a genetic code via natural process generating it itself. Mm-hmm. Perry, have I got that right, first of all?
That's right. Any code, any encoding, message decoding system that can come out of an emergent property from chemicals to code would qualify. Yes. And I think it's one of the most fundamental questions in all of science. And it just hasn't gotten the attention that it deserves.
That's right, it hasn't, and I think that's partly why we've been highlighting it in the meeting that we've just had here at the Royal Society in London. You can't get much more prestigious than that, can you?
No, it's
by the way,
it's
yes.
delightful.
Yes. Now, question perhaps also to Kevin: does it really need to be 10 million? You know, I'm a scientist. To me, that's a huge sum of money.
Okay, so I just don't know at what point when investors are putting up money, some of the most influential academic institutions in the world are endorsing, and their members are taking part in the judging of the competition. And we're talking about people at Harvard, MIT, Oxford, I mean, all high level academics are all in agreement with this principle, and that the fundamentals of communication theory apply. I don't know how it is a remotely logical move to try and double down on this position, especially by somebody who, in theory anyway, given their profession, should have at least a modicum of understanding. Now, so many times they just don't seem to be able to grasp the breakdown in their purely chemical reactions argument. So I'm just going to play this real quick just to kind of give them an idea of the stupidity of the double down that him and so many others keep doing.
So a triplet code with 4 bases covers everything we need here. Okay, we have start codons and stop codons we have to keep in mind, listed here. Okay, and as a reminder, right, in translation, the amino acids are delivered by the amino acyl tRNAs. Okay, so the mRNA does not recognize these amino acids directly. We need the tRNAs that allows this reading to occur.
Okay, so this is extraordinarily basic concept of requiring a translation mechanism for encode and decode processes. And the irony of what's happening right now in the chat of Lord Voldemort trying to double down on this is that he actually has been running around making videos claiming that it's all a stunt. But he also stated that if he was 20, he would go and he would recommend that people spend the time to try and figure this out because they would be worth $1 billion if they did. And yeah, so Lord Pudding, just go away, dude. You're pointless. You're a pointless individual. But I'm going to continue my double down on my position and the stupidity of Godless Engineer and Lord Pudding and other individuals. Okay, so position, but DNA as a code and computer code are completely different things. DNA is governed by the laws of physics and chemistry. Computer code is not. Okay, so my response: are you still holding to that position that the medium which houses the code is the defining element? When is code code? Containing medium: piece of paper, punch card, SSD, flash drive, or stored in the DNA. Okay, so those of you who, I'm wagering the majority of you are grasping this premise, but if you're not grasping this, let's just break it down extraordinarily simplistically. Lord Voldemort and Godless Engineer are both idiots. Let's say that was written down on a piece of paper. I then took a picture of it and posted it on Facebook. Somebody then downloads it and then on a piece of paper writes down, Lord Pudding and Godless Engineer are stupid idiots. Did the code, which is the language that came from me and was put into multiple different mediums and transmitted and encoded, transmitted, and decoded in multiple different facets, whether it be via the initial writing on a piece of paper, the picture taking, the upload to social media, the download from social media, the retranscription onto a piece of paper. Did the code itself and the information transfer occur through multiple mediums? Yes. Was there physics and chemistry involved at every stage of the information transfer? Yes, there was. Does this mean that there was not semantic meaning derived from the translation of the syntax structure and then the translated meaning? Yes or no? Obviously, the answer is yes. And I would love to hear Lord Voldemort actually try to debunk that premise. That is such extraordinarily basic communication theory. I mean, and I can literally back this up with so many diagrams, it's not even funny. This basic logic, as well as papers that literally define how this exact logic applies to genetic code and everything that's happening in the encode, transmit, decode process that's happening in genetics and in biological systems in general, not just in the context of DNA, RNA, protein, but in the histone codes, glycans, everything else that's happening in the plethora of other coding systems that are executing things. Yes, physics and chemistry are being used as the transmission medium, but this is, I mean, I just don't understand how people like have a modicum of understanding continue to try and double down on this stupidity. Now, his response to that question about does the medium have any bearing? We already had the debate, John. Okay, interesting. Okay, so then I had some fun with Jeopardy music, and I seriously look forward to you attempting to escape this basic question. Now, let's think about this for uno momento in terms of modern computers as we view them. And in our debate, he tried to make the distinction of the voltage difference in 0 and 1 in a computer, which is fine. Okay, no problem. The voltage is ultimately caused by physics and chemistry being manipulated in a controlled fashion to be able to enable the read or the expression of the code that is housed inside of a structure that is been derived from the manipulation of physics and chemistry by an intelligent agent. I mean, I do not understand how this is that difficult. And I actually said that directly. Holy crap, dude, are you actually this dumb, or do you just think your atheist disciples are? It enables expression of the code. Please deny this. Please, I beg you. Now, I believe at this point, I don't think he has responded. Let's see if I got any notifications. Let's see. I don't think he's responded to me asking him to double down on this. Looks like he has not. Okay, so at this point, I'm really starting to wonder if honestly he is attempting to obfuscate, because he knows, as somebody with his background, his education, he's got to know. He has to know that what he's trying to convince people of and to obfuscate away from and play semantic games with in terms of the positions I've taken and the ultimate underlying ramifications is that he can't directly answer the questions, because if he does answer the questions, then he will be embarrassed beyond belief, and any of his peers in the software development world, if he actually makes these assertions that like, oh, well, it's not really code if it's on a piece of paper and it's not on the hard drive. I mean, like it's so mind-bendingly stupid that he knows it would be embarrassing to do so. It's also why he's trying to act like it's so unreasonable for me to suggest us going to a university and going and sitting down with computer scientists and geneticists and chemists and then asking them if the same logic does not apply to genetics. And he knows that it would, which is why he is doubling down on trying to act like I am the one that is being unreasonable. Yeah, bro, it's getting funny at this point. The level of attempted dodge, and I mean, him and others like him, even like to go into crazy crap like it's not even a digital code, and it's funny. It's funny the level of attempted obfuscation spewed by the idiots on the atheist side that attempt to take advantage of people's ignorance and brainwashing to convince them that none of the things and the arguments that are being made by folks such as myself have any remote bearing whatsoever. And so let's just let's look at something real quick for example purposes. The digital code of DNA. Let's look at this. The DNA has two types of digital information. The genes that encode proteins, which are the molecular machines of life, and the gene regulatory networks, which specify the behavior of the genes. And when you really contemplate, in my opinion, the fundamentals of things such as this, when they're explaining why the importance of all of this in relation to life is the fundamental question. And I mean, I just wonder, when you're looking at a gene regulatory network diagram, this is of a sea urchin, and you look at this, and you have to have all of these variables and these control mechanisms. And yes, are the control mechanism proteins, regulation factors, promoters, enhancers, start and stop codons, all these different things? Yes, that is exactly what we're looking at. But they only work in specific positions. So if you're going to argue that the switches that are created by humans in our computer technologies that use a variety of things, reactions, electronics, electronic controls, physics, and chemistry, to have similar outcomes in relation to the expression of digital information that is housed in a code inside of that storage medium, I'm not really understanding how you're going to try and reach the conclusion that somehow this is not a direct corollary to what is happening. Not analogy, direct corollary. And I don't know why these guys continue to double down on this stuff. I mean, it's pretty mind-bending when you really get into it. And then and this is before, ladies and gentlemen, this is before you even start getting into things like chromatin computation. And by the way, while I'm here, just for fun, as you guys can see, as I'm going to scroll through here, for all of the jokers in the atheist community that say that I do not have boatloads of papers, they are idiots and they are liars, and they have obviously never actually gone to my Google Drive folder and actually begun to read through things. And in the context of information encoding, for example, there's quite a few, and I keep adding more to that one. And somehow people haven't had enough time to read all of those. Interesting. I find that very, very interesting, of how magically they just don't have the time. And actually, I need to move this one over into the coding region. Anyway, and by the way, since Lord Pudding is in the building, bro, why don't you should go look up stuff like short tandem repeats and their bearing on genetics, and how they went from being considered evidence for evolution and just junk to now being derived as key structural components for the expression and manipulation of data in real time. And how if there's even minor errors in those short, completely random, apparently, repeats, actually turns out that they're running into massive issues. And we've even started to discover different diseases that are directly correlated and derived from errors in short tandem repeats that are supposedly just random repeats that have no bearing. Wow. It's funny. It's very funny. And apparently Voldemort is rolling on the floor laughing when he doesn't actually know what the heck he's talking about and can't actually back up his BS. So when you do, bro, do one of those videos where you actually break down my argument and debunk the points I'm making from a pure biology perspective and an information theory perspective. When you do, I will make a response. Now, another little sidebar. A concept I have put forth in other conversations and other folks have in relation to epigenetics, and I've made reference to things like read, write, and erase nanomachines for regulation of epigenetic variables. Here's a paper from 2017 in relation to the controls for histone modification for key epigenetic regulatory features. And it's actually very fascinating how to do this. But if you really get into different proteins and how they actually control what is happening in that particular subset code base in terms, it's all so complicated sideways. But it's very fascinating stuff, and it's totally worthwhile to figure out a lot of this stuff. And yeah, so anyway, enough of my little tangent on this whole topic. Oh my lord, it's called short tandem repeat. It's literally a term, Voldemort. Short tandem repeat. Go Google it. I know you don't actually go Google things, but go do it and you might learn something. It's been one of the standard atheist talking points for a while now, and people just don't want to address it. Now, anyway, so I'm going to keep this going for a little bit longer, let people come in, share their thoughts for uno momento before I wrap this up and get on with the rest of my day. But like I said, I'm just amazed that people like Godless will continue to double down on these stupid positions, claim that people such as myself don't know what we're talking about and are making things up, and when they're actually shown the utter stupidity of their positions, double down again, and then make it their mission to convince people well, Voldemort occasionally gets in a fun jab. Anyway, my frustration with the online atheist community continues to grow, and the reason for that is not from anger, but from exasperation of how can anybody actually be this stupid when it comes to the plethora of information that is just standing out on full display for everybody. And yet they want to say, oh, consensus is, but they won't actually go and read things for themselves and determine whether or not they think the information that's being presented is valid, the interpretation is valid, and the conclusion is valid. And I think this was on full display last night with SFT's debate against Derek, also known as Ricky, where the standard response was consensus is we shouldn't challenge the consensus. If you're not an expert, you can't have your own opinion. And what I just continue to find more and more entertaining is it's like, so you're suggesting that the only reason you should ever challenge anything is if you have a piece of paper that says you have the credentials to challenge something. What your IQ is, and your time spent, and your understanding of the concept should not be in play. I'm pretty sure, ladies and gentlemen, that is a very, very desired state of mind by authoritarian dictatorships. from a historic perspective. Like, let's go to communist countries. You're not allowed to have an opinion on things unless you are a member of the party. And even if you're a member of the party, you must have standing inside of the party in order to have an opinion. And I just don't get that. I mean, to me, if you're going to take that position, then why don't you just say, oh, we shouldn't have freedom of speech? Oh, wait a minute. That's what the soy boys running around are claiming, that we shouldn't have free speech, that we shouldn't think for ourselves, and that we shouldn't ever, ever challenge anybody unless we have standing. Wow. Okay. Obviously, they do not have much knowledge of history, given the fact that in the not too distant past, there were many people who actually education. Very often, people didn't go to formal university and get a formal piece of paper, or wasn't for years and years after, being apprentices of people who were in a field. But why was that? The reason for that was the access to the information which was needed in order to have an understanding of a particular concept was not available unless you were either under the tutelage of an individual who did have the information and was an expert, or were at a university which had a library which housed information that had been archived on a particular topic. And therefore, you literally could not become an expert in a field because you didn't have access to the information that was required in order to become an expert. Well, what era do we live in now, ladies and gentlemen? We have something called the internet and books that we can buy on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any other zillion other locations, used bookstores, or we can go to the library and we can go and read this information, the exact same information that would be read by the person who is sitting at a university getting a degree in XYZ subject. Now, if I can also go and listen to the exact same lecture that the person who gets a degree in a topic, if I can listen to the exact same lectures and read the exact same books, am I or am I not deriving understanding of the exact same information? Obviously, the answer to that question is yes. So, if I then spend time research after I understand the foundations, if I then spend time going and reading additional information from papers written by people who are experts, and I read their discoveries, and I understand it based on the context of the fundamentals that we all learned in the exact same form and fashion, does this mean that the conclusion which I reach about that information must be the same as theirs? Well, obviously the answer is no, because if that is the case, then science would go nowhere. There would be no point in having science or scientific discussions at all, because I'm pretty sure the entire purpose of peer review is to have disagreements with somebody's opinion about a data set and a discovery and a concept. Well, I mean, this is literally what the entire point is. So if the requirement in order for me to have a disagreement with somebody is that I must have the same piece of paper, or should it be that I have to have a similar level of knowledge and understanding of what is required to interpret the question being raised, and the position being espoused, and the arguments being made? Well, unlike, it seems, the atheists of at least the online community and a significant portion of academia, I disagree with them that I must somehow bow, scrape, and obfuscate to their, or bow and scrape and refuse to obfuscate in relation to their positions and their methodologies and what they consider the status quo, because the status quo is what leads to stagnation and refusal to be innovative and refusal to consider new arguments and refusal to even accept that you might be incorrect at the very fundamental level. That is the literal example of stagnation and closed-mindedness. And it's why I find it so ironic that the atheists accuse people who believe in God as being closed-minded individuals. Yeah. You literally claim that if I question your position, that somehow I am nuts and being closed-minded, when you are refusing to consider that the consensus could be incorrect. But hopefully Godless will perhaps consider the insanity of his positions and start using basic logic. But as I wrap up, folks, let's roll out with some fun, shall we?
But it is not a code. It's a chemical. It's deoxyribonucleic acid. It's an acid. I don't understand why you think it's a code. DNA is no more of a code than Diet Coke and regular Coke.
All right, folks, have a good one as you consider these concepts and look for new methods of understanding for your own existence. As always, make sure your conclusions are logical, plausible, and probable. Have a good one, folks. Have a great weekend.